Morning, everybody. The outgoing versus the incoming, and here we go. A battle of administrations as the White House press secretary now engages in a war of words with President-elect Donald Trump, all about the issue of Russia, and he was not the only one. So it's getting started early. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to Friday Live here in America's Newsroom.
Good morning. Welcome to Friday to you, too. I'm Martha McCallum. So Josh Earnest not backing down from repeated claims that Mr. Trump knew, he says, about the hacking by Russia, he claims, and that Mr. Trump encouraged it, according to the press secretary. Here he is.
It's not a controversial statement. I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I am trying to acknowledge a basic fact. Mr. Trump was obviously aware of the fact that Russia was engaged in malicious cyber activity, and that malicious cyber activity was having a negative impact on his opponent's campaign.
So he's not the only one talking about it. President Obama did an interview about it. He'll have a press conference later today. And Trump addressing the issue at a thank you rally last night in Pennsylvania and taking on Earnest directly.
This foolish guy, Josh Earnest, I don't know if he's talking to President Obama. You know, having the right press secretary is so important. But the president's very positive, but he's not positive. And I mean, maybe he's getting his orders from somebody else.
So now President Obama himself weighing in, saying that the U.S. will take direct action against Russia. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry live in Washington. So, Ed, what exactly is the president proposing to do here?
Well, he did an interview with NPR, and you're right, he is certainly talking tough. Let's remember, big picture, though, he's talked tough before. For example, the Syria red line, and then did not act. So whether he'll actually follow through with action against Russia is a whole nother question. I think you're also seeing in that war of words what happened to all of the happy talk about how, oh, this transition is going so smoothly. President Obama and his aides are doing everything they can to help President-elect Donald Trump. Well, that man in the middle there, Vladimir Putin, has gotten in the way, because the White House seems to have forgotten that before the 2012 election, remember that President Obama was caught on a hot mic saying that if he won re-election, he'd be a lot more flexible and could do business with Vladimir Putin. Now he wants to do this interview with NPR and say on his way out the door, he's going to be really tough and may actually take action for Russia trying to interfere in the U.S. election. Watch.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be.
Now, in fairness to the White House, they did suggest in October they thought Russia was behind this hacking and did not want, they say, to interfere in the election so late in the game by doing something then. But you have to wonder what took so long now for the president to speak out so forcefully and say he's going to do something about it. U.S. officials are privately saying it has a lot to do with the fact that they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, not Donald Trump. So they were sitting on this. They were waiting. Now Donald Trump has won, and they say they're going to do something.
Now it's a whole different ballgame. So, Ed, one of the reasons that the Democrats believe that the scale was sort of tipped towards Donald Trump is because the information that was hacked into was only used against Democrats. How much backing is there for that?
Well, there's some credibility questions being raised about that point as well this morning. The Wall Street Journal reporting, well, it turns out that the DNC and the RNC, the Republican National Committee, they were both targeted. But the RNC simply had better defense systems to block the same sort of actions that Russian hackers were allegedly taking. So that doesn't fit the White House narrative, because this is all of a piece of saying, look, the Russians were doing this. They were targeting the DNC. They were targeting John Podesta. And this was all about helping Donald Trump. It doesn't help their narrative when it turns out, oh, wait, Russian hackers were also going after the RNC. Just turns out the RNC had better defense systems.
Yeah, that's what they've reported. Ed, thank you very much.
So we will cover this story from all angles this morning. Republican Senator Ron Johnson, a part of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He'll be investigating the hack. He joins us live in about 15 minutes. Top of the next hour, Trump's senior advisor Kellyanne Conway. And then later, Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, is here as well. And John Podesta, whose email is where it all started. He was the one who was hacked that allowed the password to get into the DNC. He wrote a scathing piece today directed squarely at the FBI. So we'll talk to Speaker Gingrich about that and more coming up.
Lots coming up. Okay. What about this?
President-elect Trump now returning back on the road. He was in Pennsylvania, continuing the thank you tour last night. Had a crowd of about 10,000 supporters in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Here's part of that from last evening.
We will keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country. We will reestablish the rule of law, defend the Second Amendment, protect religious liberty. They're screaming, we want the wall, build the wall, Mr. Trump. And we're going to build the wall, don't worry about it. Whether you are African American, Hispanic American, or Asian American, or whatever the hell you are, remember that we are all Americans, and we are all united by one shared destiny.
He was rocking the house. Chris Starwell, Fox News politics editor on the digital side. How you doing, sir? And good day to you.
Living the dream, brother.
The venue suits him, right? I mean, in a way we have not quite seen before. And last night, vintage Trump. I mean, he rolled out the greatest hits.
This was and it was not just the greatest hits from the campaign, but also how I did it. The Donald Trump story, as he explained how he won Pennsylvania, he relives election night, and he goes through the stuff, and the crowds eat it up. And I have a question for you,
yes,
if I may, Brother Bill. How'd you like to be a congressman from a district like that, opposing Donald Trump on any of his initiatives?
I imagine it could be interesting every morning I would wake up. He made news, though, went after Josh Earnest, called him a fool, essentially, used the word foolish about the Russia thing. So something's going on behind the scenes right now because the White House has clearly changed its tack toward him publicly. Now, I think Trump and Obama have been very kind publicly with each other, with very kind words. And I get the sense that that's changing now.
Well, this is as we have learned over time, the Trumpscalation. He goes from your friend to you. He starts and he attacks your friend to say, boy, I hope there's not a problem here. I hope that your friend that said this thing about me was it was a mistake and it wasn't you. And then the escalation to you. Then the attack comes on you. So we could be seeing, this is a warning shot essentially from Trump to Obama. Do what I say, behave right now in this time, or there's going to be trouble later. And we could be looking at rupture because Obama, who's going to have a press conference today,
that's right,
sounds like he wants to do something to Russia, which I doubt Trump would like.
I think that press conference will be very interesting later this afternoon. On Trump, though, there's a statute of limitations on the rallies. Because once you get into the new year, people are going to be looking for results. That's why they voted for him, Chris.
Well, what you say is true for a lot of the voters, but for the core group of people, the kind of people that would go out for a rally, those people are going to keep marching. And remember, in a country of 325 million people, if you just had 5 million, 10 million people even around the country that would be a shock force for you, that would go out to rallies like these, that would show up to intimidate congressmen who said, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't like your plan. I'm not interested in this. Those are people who show up to a rally in your district. You will feel it, and especially at primary time, and you will do what he tells you.
All right, Chris, thanks. Press conference this afternoon. A very interesting press conference, I believe. There's going to be a lot of headlines coming out of the thing. Thank you, sir. Keep living the dream.
Oh, yeah.
I trust. Martha.
So there was a lighthearted moment last night when President-elect Trump poked fun at the Pennsylvania vote count. Watch this.
And now we get up to Pennsylvania. We are just doing great in Pennsylvania. In fact, I won it twice, right? I won it twice because I won it. And then we had this scam operation. Let's ask for a recount. We won it again. We won Wisconsin. We won Michigan. No, I love it. I hope somebody else asks for a recount because I love winning. You know, we'll win it 3, 4, 5 times.
Mr. Trump won Pennsylvania by over 44,000 votes. And on he goes. Some saying continuing to campaign. But I think Chris Starwell's exactly right. I mean, he's campaigning, pre-campaigning for his agenda as he rolls it out because he's going to rally these people in all of these different states where he's going to want to pass stuff. So
he called Pennsylvania the bride that got away. If you think about Republicans who have gone for that state time after time back to 1988. Okay, now taking a parting shot at the director of the FBI, Harry Reid, with harsh words for Jim Comey.
I think that it's about time that Comey acknowledged publicly what a disservice he's rendered to our country. He became such a partisan that he should become the new chair of the RNC.
And Harry Reid is not the only one. Why Comey has taken some heavy fire from top Democrats. Plus, there's this.
heartbreak continues in Syria. Dozens of orphans in Aleppo pleading for help from the outside, and a growing humanitarian crisis there.
Back here at home, a police officer fighting for his life, shot in the line of duty. What we are learning about his condition so far this morning.
Terrible story here this morning. Police making 3 arrests after an officer was shot in the head in Washington, north of Seattle. The main suspect allegedly barricaded himself inside a home and continued to open fire. The main suspect allegedly barricaded himself inside a home and continued to open fire on the police. Hostage negotiators spent hours communicating with the 44-year-old man before finally taking him into custody last night. What a night it was in that area. The injured officer is out of surgery, we're told, at this hour, but he remains in serious but stable condition. He's a 30-year veteran of that police force. We wish him well this morning.
We're going to rebuild our badly depleted military, and we are going to finally take care of our great veterans. We're going to take care, believe me. Our defense policy can be summed up in 3 very important words: peace through strength.
That from last night in Pennsylvania. Now a live look at a moment here at Trump Tower. Trump promising to take care of our veterans and our country's heroes. He has 2 more cabinet positions left to nominate, and one being Secretary of Veteran Affairs. One of those being considered with me now, former Senator from Massachusetts, Scott Brown, considered for the VA job. And Senator, good morning to you, a Fox News contributor as well, and thank you for your time. Did you see Trump last night? I mean, what was your impression of the way he carried himself in PA? Why don't we start there?
Well, first of all, I love the plain talk, the plain speaking Donald Trump when he is in an environment that obviously is conducive to him kind of relaxing and have a little fun with the crowd. And the thing that I've always loved is the fact that his messaging is so positive. You know, make America great again, buy America, build America, 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 taking care of our troops, our military, our workers who have lost their jobs because of Obama's policies, and then reestablishing trust with our allies and fear with our foes, dealing with the border, dealing with ISIS. It's all positive messaging coming out, and that's fantastic for the country and for the American people.
Okay. Now the cabinet has a few spots left, right? And he's talked about the veterans for a year and a half. That's a spot that, I don't know, perhaps you get that job. Do you think it's coming your way or not?
Well, I know I'm in the mix, certainly, and I've been honored to be considered. There's some great people being considered, and regardless of who it is, Bill, the work is just overwhelming. Veterans are dying. There's a lot of mismanagement. You've got some great people working in the VA, but you also have some people that are just collecting a paycheck and checking a box and treating our veterans really, I think, with a lack of respect. And that needs to change. And you need to put somebody in there who's going to get the congressional authority and the presidential authority to fire these people, because there's a mentality that, Scott Brown's not going to do anything. Pete Hegseth's, no one's going to fight me. Fire me, I'm sorry. So that attitude has to change.
Well, I know your name's in the mix, and you mentioned Pete Hegseth as well, a colleague of ours here at Fox. Alan West's name is in the mix as well, I understand. Yeah. When you consider how much Trump has talked about this, and I know a lot of these positions have been nominated early, and there's still a month to go before the inauguration, I'm just wondering about the level of priority that is still given to this job. What do you think about that?
Well, he did. He's made it the cornerstone of his campaign, and veterans came out overwhelmingly, military and veterans. Listen, I would have thought it would have been one of the first ones after Secretary of State, but I'm not the president-elect. I know for a fact, however, he is giving it his total attention in terms of bringing in somebody who he feels is absolutely 100% right for the job, because there's been a lot of transition in that position over the years, and there's a lack of, I think it's like a rudderless ship kind of going around, and he needs to put somebody in there who's going to have the, as I said, the support of Congress, the support of the president and the veterans themselves.
Yeah, I get it, but it's a huge job, and we've talked about the bureaucracy and getting it turned around. I mean, when you're sitting there with them, what's your big sales point? I mean, how would Senator Scott Brown change the VA?
Well, I think it's important having military experience, having political experience, and having media experience, being that face of the VA, being able to convey what you're doing and why to the American public and to the veterans groups so they clearly and concisely understand what you're doing and why. That's number one. Obviously, we have to deal with the suicides. We have to deal with the long lines. We got to deal with the lack of, we're not getting a good value for our dollars. And going after those problem hospitals and vet centers and clinics that really are the biggest problems in our country right now. Immediately, all hands on deck, getting those facilities serviced properly so they can properly serve our military men and women who have given so much.
This job is entirely doable. That's what you're saying. It is possible.
Yeah, it's doable, but there's going to be at least a couple of years to really get it right, and there's going to be a lot of sleepless nights, that's for sure.
Senator, thank you. Best of luck to you, okay?
Bill.
We'll see whether or not you land it. Scott Brown there.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you,
All right,
sir.
man.
So President Obama and his successor stepping up their war of words over Russian hacking as the White House vows now that they are going to take some severe action against Russia. So a lot of people raising their eyebrows and wondering what took so long. For that, we're going to talk to Senator Ron Johnson. And then there is this. Oh, look out! Look out!
Coming to a street near you, possibly. There's a lot of bad weather out there. Terrifying scene here. That's a school bus that was loaded with kids sliding down that icy road. Details on where this happened and also that weather system, where it's moving for you today and into the weekend.
A war of words erupting between the White House and Team Trump these days over reports of Russia hacking the election process, they claim, during the U.S. election. The timing of President Obama's announcement of an investigation and why it didn't happen earlier. Amid these back and forth jabs, a new element is now being put into the mix. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange saying that he wouldn't say much more, but that the Russians or any state were not responsible for the WikiLeaks release. Watch this.
In order to prevent a distraction attack against our publications, we've had to come out and say, no, it's not a state party. Stop trying to distract in that way. Pay attention to the content of the publication.
So in other words, when you say state party, it wasn't another state like Russia or some other country?
Correct. Our source is not the Russian government.
I thought that was fascinating. Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. He is also on the Foreign Relations Committee, which will be investigating these hacking. Senator, good morning to you. Good to have you here today.
Good morning, Martha.
Do you give that credibility? Julian Assange says, look, we handled this whole thing and we don't like to talk about it, but we also want people to understand that Russia was not behind this release.
Well, Martha, I don't know what to believe. I'm chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs. I was in that first secure briefing in September where we had Jay Johnson and James Comey and Lisa Monaco assure everybody, the 12, that Russia or no state actor could hack into voting machines and affect the outcome in that manner. And the whole purpose of that meeting was to assure the American public, give them confidence that the election that was going to occur on November 8th was going to be fair and legitimate. And now this administration is changing its tune. I asked for a briefing, a secure briefing from the CIA this morning. I came in yesterday to meet with General Kelly, and they refused a briefing. So I don't know what's up with that. So I certainly take anything from Julian Assange with a grain of salt, but we just really don't know. And quite honestly, I don't know how you can assume or with a high level of confidence what any actor's motives are in this. We certainly, it shouldn't come as a surprise to us that Russia is hacking and spreading disinformation and propaganda.
Yeah.
I don't like it. We need to push back on it, but this has been known for quite some time.
Yeah. I want to play for you a soundbite from President Obama on NPR in an interview yesterday. And he's talking about what his response will be to Russia, if indeed it is Russia. Julian Assange says it's not. But here's what he says he would do.
The irony of all this, of course, is that for most of my presidency, there's been a pretty sizable wing of the Republican Party that has consistently criticized me for not being tough enough on Russia.
So now he says he's going to get tough on Russia. He said at a time and place of our choosing, there will be some retaliation. In light of everything that is going on with Russia and with Syria, and now talking about emails, what do you make of that comment by the president, Senator?
Well, let's face it, for most of his presidency, the only consequences are him saying that there are going to be serious consequences. So I'm sure at this point in time, Vladimir Putin's just shaking his boots. Now, there ought to be serious consequences, but they should be relayed in advance to some of these state actors that are showing the kind of aggression because of America's weakness in our response to them. So now we need to take this very seriously, but it's not just about saying there's going to be serious consequences. There actually have to be some. And let's face it, the next president, President Trump, is going to be dealing with a real mess created by this president's feckless and ineffective and weak foreign policy.
I mean, you look back over the relationship between Russia and this administration, and you go back to almost immediately when President Obama took office, the dismantling of the project to build missile shields in Eastern Europe, which would have been against Putin and aggressiveness. And then we saw what happened there in Crimea and Ukraine. The leaning over moment where President Obama said to Medvedev, look, after the election, I'm going to have a little bit more flexibility to deal with you guys. And then, you know, Syria being overrun, and what's happening in Aleppo right now, while many would say the president was silent and watched this go on, and now he's upset about email hacking and he's going to go get him?
Now, let's face it, this president has had a strategy. It's called peace through withdrawal. And I think you're hearing out of the president-elect that his strategy is going to be peace through strength, which is the only thing that works. So we have to rebuild our economy, rebuild our military. We need to show Russia and China and Iran that America is back, and we're going to be really dealing with them from a position of strength, because dealing with them from a position of weakness has been a miserable failure.
All right, you spoke with General John Kelly, who is going to head up the DHS. A lot of people don't have a real sense of him fully yet. What's your impression of him, and what do you think our Homeland Security posture, how's it going to be different?
Well, first of all, he's an outstanding pick. He's an extraordinary individual, a four-star general, a gold star parent. And his experience as the head of Southern Command puts him in a perfect position with the types of threats we're dealing with. The fact that we don't have a secure border, oftentimes fueled by the fact that we have this insatiable demand for drugs, which has given rise to the drug cartels and transnational criminal organizations. He's fully aware of this. He's got great relationships with high government officials throughout Central America and South America. So I think he's just perfectly suited for this. I really enjoyed my meeting with him yesterday. I'm looking forward to a very close working relationship with him as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
All right. Busy times. Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for weighing in. Good to see you, sir.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
29 past now, the Senate's most powerful Democrat accusing the FBI director of intentionally helping Donald Trump in this election.
He's basking in the glow of the election, because that's how he wanted it to turn out. And so I don't see him going anyplace unless he gets a quirk of conscience.
Harry Reid blaming Hillary Clinton's loss squarely at the feet of the FBI, and he's not the only one. Her campaign manager, John Podesta, calling the agency deeply broken. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, his reaction to all this still to come this morning on America's Newsroom. Fox is alert now. Syria suspending evacuations in the town of Aleppo. Russia claiming that all women and children have been taken out. But the UN and international aid groups say they are still people trapped inside as that humanitarian crisis continues to unfold. There's been a constant back and forth throughout the week. This is these videos emerge of orphans trapped in Aleppo pleading for help, saying they want to live like everyone else. That's on the video. It's been released by a Syrian aid group, said to be recorded on Wednesday, 2 days ago of this week.
I think that it's about time that Comey acknowledged publicly what a disservice he's rendered to our country by doing nothing except interfering with the election. That is beyond all precedent, what he did. He became such a partisan that he should become the new chair of the RNC. I've said he should resign a long time ago, but obviously he's basking in the glow of the election, because that's how he wanted it to turn out.
Wow. Outgoing Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid blasting the FBI Director James Comey as Democrats continue pushing the narrative that Comey's decision to renew the Hillary Clinton email probe 11 days before Election Day caused her to lose. Juan Williams is Fox News political analyst and author of We the People, and Mercedes Schlapp is a former media spokeswoman for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Juan and Mercedes, great to have you both here. Good morning, to you.
Morning.
I was listening to this yesterday, and I was struck. I mean, it is very damning and perhaps unfair. Juan, what do you think? Fair or no?
Oh, I think it's very fair. I mean, I was even struck when you said narrative, because to me, what we're doing here is simply reporting what happened. I mean, it's unprecedented that Jim Comey, the FBI director, would intervene in a national election so close to Election Day. But the part that really stuns me is the recent reports about how they were so lackadaisical with regard to the cyber threat to the Clinton campaign, informing the campaign of it and going after the threat. And of course, we now know, this is no narrative, again, we know that all the U.S. intelligence agencies, with the exception of the FBI, joined in saying that Russia is responsible for this hacking.
Yeah, except Julian Assange says it wasn't. And, you know, that whole idea that they are coordinated, I think you have to leave that at the doorstep, Juan, when they won't sit down with the committee that wants to ask them questions about it, because clearly they are not on the same page with this. Mercedes, what do you think?
Well, it's unprecedented that you would have a former Secretary of State basically have a homebrew server in her house, where we know that there was classified information that went through her server system. And so I think that we also have to realize that Mrs. Clinton brought this upon herself. Not only that, we can also add that obviously she was one where from a political strategy standpoint, it didn't work in the battleground states. Her messaging was off. She was focused completely on trying to attack Donald Trump personally without pushing forward a strong economic message. I mean, Martha, there are so many components as to why Hillary Clinton lost the election, that to just say we're going to blame it on Comey. Let's remember that Comey was not a fan of the Republicans or the Democrats, because when you look back at that July press conference, it was Comey who didn't recommend to the Department of Justice to move forward on a Clinton indictment. And at the end of the day, the Republicans were upset at him. So
exactly.
We have to keep that in mind as these Democrats continue to push forward this narrative that it's Comey's fault that Hillary Clinton lost this election.
I mean, I think you got it. It's a wash, Juan. I mean, first, he comes out in July and says, that she was behaved terribly and recklessly, but we're not going to indict her. Then he comes out and says, reopen the thing. So, of course, Republicans were all excited about that prospect. Then he comes back and says, oh, we didn't find anything. How they got through, hundreds of thousands of emails in that time was a big question mark. So I think a lot of people on both sides questioned all of that, but I don't know how it could possibly weigh heavily on one side or the other. But Democrats seem to be, sort of grasping onto this in a big way right now.
Well, Martha, it's not a wash. This is a totally false equivalence. And, Mercedes goes on about Hillary Clinton's emails. To me, again, Hillary Clinton and her emails, you can make a judgment about it, but it is no way the equal of a foreign government seeking to subvert a U.S. election.
How did they do that, though, Juan? How did they do that?
Let me continue here. The idea that you have a foreign government involved, and then Comey coming forward with regard to the emails that Mercedes was talking about, and, coming to the conclusion, he said it was unanimous that Hillary Clinton had done nothing that would justify prosecution. And then he goes on and rants against her as if to make the case, even though he hasn't decided to recommend a prosecution to justice. That looked like a partisan effort right there.
You know what?
And then to come back just before the election,
I take direct insult to that. Working at the White House, talking to individuals who have been in the military with high security clearance, they will tell you clearly that if anyone were to mishandle classified information, they would have been prosecuted.
But
that is very clear. They always felt there was a double standard with Hillary Clinton.
Nobody at the FBI, Mercedes, hold on a second. Nobody at the FBI thought she mishandled anything.
All right, so we know. Look,
carelessness, gross negligence. Where do you want me to go with this one?
But what they said was that she was reckless in some regard, but nobody said that she had mishandled information in the way, let's say, a general Petraeus.
No, she was not indicted, and Juan is absolutely right about that. And to a certain extent, you do have to put that behind you now. But to suggest that that the Russians released John Podesta's emails that said nasty things about his own candidate at times, that he didn't think she was a great candidate, revealed things that were said about Catholics and others. Nobody has disputed the content of those emails, Juan. It's not like they're saying that the Russians, sort of engineered the outcome by rigging into voting booths across the country.
That's right.
Well, we're talking about emails that no one has disputed. Now, believe me, those emails are going to come out on Republicans. They're going to come out probably on the Trump folks.
Martha,
they'll come out on everybody before this thing is through.
Martha, you get a special gift this Christmas because you've hit the key. One of the interesting developments in recent days is reports that, in fact, the Russians had the capacity to hack the RNC, did not do it. So they did it
Weren't
solely
able to.
against,
They failed to infiltrate because of the RNC security.
Well, hang on, let me finish. They did it against the DNC, released those gossipy items that were then picked up by the press as, well, this is legitimate. But you know what? The idea is it was directed against one candidate in an American election.
All right.
I hate to say it, but to watch the political assault by President Obama on Donald Trump in the timing of talking about this Russian hacking, when we know lawmakers and even Vice President Biden came out and said that fundamentally they were not concerned about the Russians hacking this election. Biden said that back in October. And because their candidate lost, they've decided to bring this up. Come on, Juan.
This is bigger than
leave it there.
Bigger than politics.
Good debate. Mercedes and Juan, thank you very much.
Take care, Martha.
And I'm getting a special little gift for Christmas, apparently, for Juan.
Nobody had more zest for life and passion and joy.
People along the way, and his passing was played out rather publicly too over the last year, especially.
He had a great smile and a great sense of humor and gift for his talent for what he did. So he will be missed. Our thoughts are with his family today. So a battle between the administrations, the Obama White House calling out Donald Trump on hacking. So what does the Trump side have to say about that? We will talk to Senior Advisor Kellyanne Conway.
Plus, it may be the worst part of the legacy of the White House. What will Donald Trump do about the disaster that has become Syria?
When I look at what's going on in Syria, it's so sad. It's so sad. And we've got to help people. And we have the Gulf states. They have nothing but money. We don't have money. We owe $20 trillion. I will get the Gulf states to give us lots of money, and we'll build and help build safe zones in Syria so people can have a chance.
There's a bit of news last night now as Aleppo lies in ruins. President-elect Donald Trump promising those safe zones to help refugees living in the middle of that nightmare, those who have survived so far anyway. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger out of Illinois, pilot in the Air National Guard. And sir, good day to you. We talked about safe zones during the election. It came up last night. Did that surprise you? Is that something that would work in a new administration now?
I think it's going to have to happen. I mean, you look at, obviously, the human tragedy, that's one thing. You look at the political implications. So you have this mass migration that's been coming out of the Middle East into Europe and destabilizing it. You have this clash of cultures that's going on, and it's only going to continue to get worse. And so I think Donald Trump is realizing the importance of having to do something. He's probably not talking about going as far as, for instance, I would like to go, but the safe zone is a big start. And the fact is this, even with the fall of Aleppo, this is not going to burn itself out. It's not going to end. The civil war is going to continue, and it could continue, frankly, we could be talking a decade and a half.
5 years on. What do you mean not as far as you'd like to go? How far would you go?
Well, I think what ultimately needs to happen is, in order to get a ceasefire, an enforceable ceasefire, you have to have a stick behind it. And this is where, Secretary of State Kerry, President Obama have utterly failed, as they keep trying to sue for peace, but they don't have a stick. So, hey, let's have a ceasefire, but if you violate it, the repercussions are strikes against the regime. It doesn't mean you start war. What it means is you can enforce a ceasefire. So I hope, President-elect Trump, when he gets in there, says, let's do everything we can to stop this. I don't know, but the safe zones is a very good start, and I think a necessary first step to fixing this problem.
There has been a lot of talk between Washington and Moscow. John Kerry said this yesterday.
The Assad regime is actually carrying out nothing short of a massacre. And we have witnessed indiscriminate slaughter, not accidents of war, not collateral damage, but frankly purposeful, a cynical policy of terrorizing civilians.
And that's a strong statement. But again, when I mentioned words, you gave a chuckle.
Yeah, I mean, This is all it is words. You know, Mr. Secretary, are we going to go back to the table again so that the Russians and Assad can stall while they make gains on the ground and pretend like they're interested in a ceasefire and then violate that ceasefire, and then we go back to the table because we want another ceasefire again? I mean, you have to back this up with some kind of enforceable action. And, you know, from what I understand, to Secretary Kerry's credit, he's actually advocated behind the scenes for strikes. It's President Obama that's too worried about upsetting the delicate deal with Iran right now and upsetting the Russians. By the way, the Russians have an economy the size of Italy. This isn't the old Soviet Union. This is an economy the size of Italy dictating world policy because President Obama's frankly too worried to push back. So I'm excited about President-elect Trump regaining the narrative and the momentum for our country.
So we wait until the 20th of January until something changes. Quickly on another topic, have you seen evidence of Russian hacking?
No, I mean, I haven't seen the evidence, and what I've seen I can't share. You know, the intelligence agencies say they believe the Russians were.
Do you believe it then, based on what you've seen, without describing?
I believe that the Russians were involved to an extent. The question is, what's the end result? And it goes a way bridge too far to say right now that they did it for Trump or that it elected Trump president. I think Trump was elected overwhelmingly president by, you know, the vast majority of electors in the country, and to delegitimize that is wrong. But we do need to know if the Russians attempted to have any involvement, and that should be a bipartisan issue that doesn't question the legitimacy of President-elect Trump.
Thank you for your time. Adam Kinzinger, Republican from Illinois. Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas to you.
You bet. You too. Merry Christmas.
We are remembering John Glenn this morning as Americans say their goodbyes to the astronaut and former U.S. Senator and all-around American hero. The Ohio native will lie in repose at the state's Capitol building, where a public viewing is about to begin. So we will take you there for some moments with John Glenn.
It's our Joseph A. Bank Super Week.